So can you build a computer cheaper than the Mac Studio and still get comparable or better results? That's what we're going to be taking a look at today. Yo, what up YouTube? Crash Wilcox, and today, as I said, we are finally building a PC. Man, it seems like it's been a long time since we've actually had a chance to sit down and do a full PC build, and I'm excited about it if you can't tell. So kind of the goal of this video is we're going to be taking a look at, so often if you've been watching videos recently, it's like, hey, we're going to build a Mac Studio killer, right? And it's always like an i9 12900K with an RTX 3090. Of course, that's going to beat a Mac Studio. Even the M1 Ultra, you're talking like 500 watts of power, way more cores. Like, of course it is. So our goal here today, though, is to see, can we build something cheaper and still get comparable, if not better results in, certain applications? And you can see here, so I'm just going to kind of go out, go through the normal parts that we're going to put in this computer. And then, I'm probably not going to film the entire build process, but then, kind of show you the final product. And then we'll go through some comparable benchmarks. We're talking just professional application type things, video editing, photo editing, that sort of stuff. And seeing if, we can save a little bit of money and ultimately come away with a comparable product. So obviously the one area it's not going to be comparable in is size. You can't really equal the Mac Studio in how small it is. So we're not even going to try the size. That's why you can see my case here. So that'll be the first part we get into today. We are using the Corsair 4000D Airflow, and it's a ATX, tower case. And the reason why I chose this case specifically, obviously the price was right. It wasn't terribly expensive, but if you can see, well, I'll just have the picture up on here. It's got front panel USB-C, so that's important. And this had that, so I thought good airflow, good case, front panel USB-C, not terribly expensive. It's good enough for me. All right, so we got the case off the desk, clearing some room for the rest of the parts here. So we're just going to kind of go through and I'll talk a little bit about why I picked what I picked. So first here, obviously the first big decision you have, right, is you're going to go AMD or you're going to go Intel. Well, I think when you're talking, about productivity, I think Intel and NVIDIA is just the way to go, especially as AM4 is sort of being phased out. And AM5 is on the horizon. DDR5 is available now on Intel's 12th gen, whereas it isn't on Ryzen's 5000. And also, the price is just more comparable. It's better. And, the roles have changed, with Intel and AMD. So for all those reasons, Intel just made better sense. And then plus, when you're talking about video editing, Intel and their quick sync capability through their integrated graphics, it just makes working on a timeline much better. And from my experience, I prefer using Intel when it comes to video editing, content creation type stuff. So that's what we're going with. So rocking the Z690 Aorus Elite X is the motherboard that we chose. The reason we picked this motherboard mostly has to do with I/O. When you're talking about a workstation type computer, you got a lot of stuff you need to plug into it. The Z690 here from Aorus has a pretty robust I/O, as we'll see as we open up these packages. But then more than that, it's DDR5, relatively inexpensive, in the realm of Z690 DDR5 motherboard. So that's the reason we chose this one. Nothing really spectacular there. And then to pair with this, so you get a nice, decent motherboard, right? You don't want to go and get a budget motherboard and an i9, kind of a thing. You don't want to get $800 motherboard and get an i3, right? You want them to be comparable. So that was kind of the goal here. So with this, we're pairing it with the i5 12600K. The 12600K, the reason this was the choice here as opposed to an i7 is it's comparable core count. First off, the Mac Studio that I have is the M1 Max. So these are both 10 core CPUs, though this is hyper threaded, so it's got 20 threads. And the price was right, you know, under $300 for 10 12th gen cores. Obviously, they're utilizing the hybrid architecture of P cores and E cores. I believe it's 6 P cores, 4 E cores, and 20 threads. So hopefully this will be comparable in price or in performance. I'm assuming single thread it's going to be comparable there and probably beat it in multi-threaded workloads, but we'll take a look. So to go with that, let's see what else we got down here. So we'll go with the RAM. So for the RAM kit here, we're going with 32 gigs of DDR5 5200 megahertz RAM. 64 would have been great, but 64 cost twice as much money. And then you go with 64 gigs of RAM and you have the same price product as the Mac Studio. You're not saving any money there. Also, the Mac Studio has 32 gigs of RAM. So now we have 32 gigs here as well. So we'll see, this is my first DDR5 build. Everything should be perfectly compatible, no issues, but we'll take a look. So I've mentioned before about buying things from Best Buy. I'm a big fan of Best Buy. They've got a great return policy. All their open box stuff, you can save some money there. And they've all worked really well. I haven't had an issue with anything open box or, you know, Geek Box certified or Geek Squad certified. So I did that again here to save a little bit of money. So for the boot drive, there's only really one boot drive to get, and that is the Samsung 980 Pro. And I got this Best Buy Geek Squad certified refurbished. So it knocked about 30 bucks off the price of this 500 gig boot drive. And, you know, the Samsung speeds are outrageous, which is important because the Mac Studio's SSD is outrageous. I mean, they're both around 7,000 megabytes read speeds. So that should hopefully make them comparable. Where this will definitely make up some big ground on the Mac Studio is that 512 gigabyte SSD is all the Mac Studio has. So for this, for sort of just the working drive here, the media drive, we're going with a 1 terabyte PNY. This is a Gen 4 NVMe drive. Not the fastest, but plenty fast for, you know, what we're using it for. Has about 3,600 megabyte read speeds. You know, we'll add more storage in later, but again, you're going to add more storage, you're going to add more money, and then you're not really, you know, saving anything in the long run. So I don't know where I can put this. There you go. So what else is left? Okay, we'll save the GPU for the end here. So let's grab the rest of the parts. So the least sexy part of any build is going to be the power supply. And for that, we decided to go with the Corsair CX750M. This is an 80 plus bronze power supply. It's semi-modular. So 80 plus gold would be great. Fully modular would be great, but it would also cost more money. 750 watts is going to be plenty for what we need. You know, it's not flashy, but it's going to do the trick. And that's all we really needed to do. Corsair is a reputable brand. 80 plus bronze is fine, efficient enough. We're not going to really have a problem with that there. So this will be a nice power supply for us. And then on to the CPU cooler. So my original intention here was to use the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120. Got this for relatively cheap on Amazon and had some decent reviews. a nice air cooler. You don't need anything outrageous necessarily for the i5, but we just wanted to make sure we got some good cooling. So I originally picked this up, and then, however, we're not going to use this because Be Quiet I reached out to Be Quiet with an email, and they offered to send me a free LGA 1700 mounting kit. So instead of using the Peerless Assassin, because I already own the Darkrock Pro 4, which is one of my favorite CPU coolers ever. This thing is wonderful. It works really well. Price to performance, you know, it's pretty comparable to the Noctua NH-D15, but it's cheaper. And again, when we're trying to save money here on this build, cheaper is better. So that's going to be the CPU cooler that we go with. I don't know how I'm going to make all of this fit here. Let's see if we can move this over. And yeah, having them send me the LGA 1700 mounting kit for free was a nice touch. I appreciate that. Be Quiet. So that'll work nice. So then the last thing is GPU, and that's really been the bane of building a PC for so long, is how do you find a GPU that's not astronomically expensive for what you get? So thankfully, in the time of filming this, right, is April 2022, GPU prices are starting to bottom out. I could have waited a little bit longer and they would continue to fall. Intel's GPUs are right around the corner. We may get one of those just to see what it's like, but I thought prices had fallen enough to make it worthwhile. So we jumped online and we picked up an RTX 3060 Ti. That is the GPU that we chose to go with here. And the reason that we chose to go with this GPU is, let's hope that doesn't fall, is a couple reasons. Number one, price. It was, like I said, price has fallen, making this reasonably affordable. But then the RTX 3060 Ti is comparable essentially to a 2080 Ti when it comes to performance, especially in content creation type workloads. And, when you're talking about 2080 Ti performance for around $500, $550, even though the price may come down more later, that's still really worthwhile in my opinion. So that's why we ultimately chose this. We didn't really dive into looks too much, RGB, none of that. We were trying to save money. And what we ultimately came out with, especially once I send the other cooler back, and I'm counting the fact that I already own the Be Quiet Darkrock Pro 4 because I own it and I didn't have to pay for it again. So with all of that together, we're coming in at right about $1,860, which saves us around, $250-ish? I can't do the public math right now because the Mac Studio came in at $2,140. So what's that, $280-ish? I don't know, that you're saving. So the goal is going to be, can we build a computer saving $280 that gets us pretty good, if not better, performance in a lot of these creative applications? So let's go ahead and get all this stuff open. Let's get it built. Let's shed a couple tears of joy for the process. Then I'll have some benchmarks and my final thoughts when we're done. All right, so there she is. That's a wrap. She's all put together. You guys saw some of the benchmarks, and let me just start off by saying, man, is it good to put a PC together again. It has been a little while, and there's just nothing quite like dropping that CPU into a socket or, slotting in your first stick of RAM. It just, for a PC enthusiast, it's just nothing quite like it. Very enjoyable. And as you can see from those benchmarks, our question that we started out with was, can you build a PC that's cheaper than a Mac Studio and achieve equal or better results? We started off by saying so often you see these videos and it's someone putting together an i9 and a 3090, and of course that's better. So here we went with an i5 and a 3060 Ti, and as you saw from the benchmarks, yeah, you can. Saved us $260 and got better performance in almost every respect, outside of photo editing. And I didn't run all the benchmarks. I mean, I ran a few that I think people would use: the video editing from DaVinci Resolve and photo editing, some 3D rendering. So all in all, I think, can you save yourself some money and get a comparable product? Yeah, absolutely you can. That doesn't mean that this doesn't have its use case, though. As I just did the video a little bit ago, this is a perfect computer for podcasting. If podcasting is your jam, this is probably your best option because it's whisper quiet, it's powerful enough, port selection is great, it's portable enough. I mean, you can literally take this with you wherever you go, if you have a little portable monitor or whatever. So this has its use case, but when it comes to just general overall computing power, you still can't take anything away from what PC has to offer. And I mean, if you're in the 3D modeling world, it's not even close. I would not recommend a MacBook unless, I don't know, you have an office and you're building or you're supplying 20 or 50 of these, and the money you would save on power consumption, maybe that would be valuable. I don't know, but just raw computing power, you got to give it to Windows here and a PC. And just the simple fact that we did save some money here, but we have an upgrade path, right? We can slot in 32 more gigs of RAM, which we will eventually, and prices will probably go down a little bit. But even if they don't, $250 down the road when you have it for 32 extra gigs, $250 in a month or two is a lot easier to swallow than buying an entire new computer for $2,000, $2,500, right? If you need a bigger hard drive, you could easily find a SATA SSD that's multiple terabytes for, $100, $200. Shouldn't be that hard. Or go with an older mechanical hard drive if you just need simple storage space. And then not to mention the rest of the upgrading path, right? And this is again where Apple, to their own chagrin, I think, and sort of shame on them in this world we're living in, they need to really step up their game. They even give you the second M.2 slot in this Mac Studio and then don't allow you to upgrade it, which is nonsense. I mean, even if they told you you can only upgrade it through flash storage purchased from Apple, that would be stupid, but it would be something, right? You would at least have an avenue, but they don't, right? Here, you can fully upgrade it. So again, if my content creation needs increase, for 350 extra bucks, again, you could throw an i7 in here and increase that core count, increase that clock speed a little bit. If you need much more, then again, you can go to that i9 level. Not to mention LGA 1700 is supposed to be compatible with 13th gen, Raptor Lake, I think. So you have that upgrade path again for another cycle, which, even still, if we were just sticking with this computer, I'd feel comfortable that this would last me, 2-3 years of good content creation work. Not to mention the fact that it'll game pretty well for the next couple years. But again, if you went to that i9 level and maybe found a 3080, now you're talking 4 or 5 years realistically of good work out of this if you couldn't upgrade along the road. But then again, 13th gen comes out, that builds you more time in. So you can just do these incremental upgrades, which has always been a hallmark of building your own PC, right? And then all in all, you know, it just came together well. I had a couple of extra fans laying around. So this case came with 2 120 millimeter fans, one in the front, one in the rear. I had 2 extra. They just so happened to be the exact same Corsair fans that they were using. So it fit nicely. But this case was a joy to build in. Very spacious. As you can see, the cable management wasn't perfect, but it was all right. I mean, and I did not spend a lot of time on it. So, and that was with a semi-modular power supply. So not bad. You know, you could go with custom cables as well. If you really want to dress this thing up, you could slide some custom cables in there from Cable Mod or something, really dress this up well. So a lot of possibilities. I just think when you're trying to weigh, if you're a Mac guy, you only have this option, right? And it makes sense and it's good. I don't want to diminish what this is. It's good. But if you're just neutral and you're just trying to find best bang for the buck, I think this PC build right here is really a good option. The i5, the 3060 Ti, if you can find a DDR5 motherboard within your budget, you know, give you a little bit more of that future proofing there. And another shout out here to Best Buy. I'm not sponsored by them, but you know, if you can find some Best Buy refurbished or open box parts, they're always work really well for me. So I would recommend trying to save some money there as well. So man, that's the computer. That's the comparison. All in all, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. I think you would be as well. And if you've never built your own PC, I highly encourage it. It's not quite that difficult. It may seem like it if you've never done it before, but there's thousands and thousands of tutorials online. You know, it's not quite that complicated. You're smart enough. I'm sure of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, consider dropping a like, subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate all of that. But until next time, God bless.